looks like this. And yeah, I just want to emphasize that really the disproportionate amount of the work happens in the first block in the departmental co-op. So that should feel good for you because that's, your own home country and, most in your control, the players there. And it may seem sort of scary that your dossier is going out to all these other places, but by the time we see it in PSOM co-op, for the vast majority of people, we're just having the opportunity to say, wow, you're great, and move your dossier along. It goes from us to the dean, and then the dean will take it to the provost staff conference for a final vote by the provost alone. But that's the process. So next slide. Okay, so what are the timelines for this? And we're specifically talking about CE and tenure today. So there are timelines, and there's some nuance to them. So we'll go over in detail what that is. So next slide. For the most stringent timeline, I guess I will say, is for tenure basic scientists. So that is 7 years, and it looks like what's outlined here in this slide, where there is essentially one review slightly shy of halfway through. That would be the reappointment, which is at the end of the 3rd year. And that is not only by the departmental co-op, but also PSOM co-op. And then somewhere in those next couple of years, you're being reviewed by departmental co-op, come back to us, and the promotion needs to happen by the 7th year. And if you're not promoted, that is your terminal year. Next slide. So for assistant to associate in CE and tenure with clinical responsibilities, it's a 10-year timeline. And there are, instead of the 1 reappointment, there are 2 at 3 and 6 years. And then generally speaking, for most people, somewhere in that 7 to 9 year mark, you're going to be going out for review first by your departmental co-op and then by us to go up for promotion. And again, if you're not promoted by your 10th year, that is your terminal year. Next slide. So these are suggested, not mandatory timelines. And many people ask us about early promotion. Doesn't happen very often for the tenure basic scientists. In fact, I think probably almost never. But for those who have that tenure timeline, it does happen from time to time. So really, the promotion process happens when your mentors, your chair, and your departmental co-op think you're ready. There is no strict guideline. Usually, co-op wants you to have completed your 2nd reappointment in the CE and the tenure with clinical tracks. So most folks are in that sort of 7 to 9 year kind of time frame. However, if you're amazing and you feel like you're ready and you've sort of hit whatever marks you think you need to hit earlier than that, it is possible to go up early. Generally, we discourage people from doing this unless you really have got a pretty outstanding dossier. Why? Because the provost will only consider your case once. And so the risk here is that if you don't meet the bar, there's something that's, weak about your dossier, you don't get a second chance. So you need to really be sure. Next slide. So then on the opposite side of the coin, how about if you need an extension? So let's go through the issues surrounding that. Next slide. So you can have an extension of your probationary period. The eligible events are listed here: birth or adoption of a child, that's one per child, 1 year per child, serious medical condition of a faculty member or a family member, or a catastrophic event. And that might be, for example, a wipeout of your lab animals or specimens or whatever that really sets you back a couple of years. There are conditions on these extensions. They're 1 year at a time. A maximum of 3 years may be obtained. It applies to the current appointment cycle that you're in, and requires a timely written notification to the chair, the dean, and the provost. Arbretta, you want to add something there?
Yes, thank you, Erica. I just wanted to add that for the qualifying reasons for the caregiver, you can be a primary or co-equal caregiver for a parent, child, spouse, or domestic partner. Also for the catastrophic event, I just want to point out that there is a slightly different process for review of a catastrophic event, which, the most recent request was due to the loss of a mouse colony, for instance. But that review requires that an ad hoc committee be appointed by the dean. That ad hoc committee reviews all of the documentation and then prepares a summary and recommendation to the dean and also the chief scientific officer. After the dean and the CSO reviews that documentation, the dean then makes a decision as to whether that catastrophic event extension is going to be extended. So it's very important that you submit a request for a catastrophic event as soon as possible, because it could add an additional month or two in the process.
Thanks. And there's more information at the URL at the bottom of the slide. I just want to go back and answer a question in the comment, how instructor years may factor into early promotion. So instructor years are really not counted. I mean, your performance is assessed at rank. So it really is what you've done at rank. Hope that answers that question. And next slide. So
there's another question in the chat, Erica.
Yeah.
Robert Palermo. Robert Palermo asked, for early promotion, if your initial application is denied, then is it best to wait until you are due on the typical timeline?
You can't, as I said, you get one shot. There's one shot. So unfortunately, if you go up and are denied, then that's it. You have then face a terminal year and have to leave. So that is from assistant to associate. After you've hit associate, that does not apply. If you get turned down as associate to professor, you can reapply. That takes 2 years. There is a delay. But for the assistant to associate, it's a one-off situation. Just for these FAQs about extensions, Arboretta, do you want to just run through these?
Sure. Thank you. I also want to add that, you see key resources on the previous slide. It was on the previous slide, but your faculty coordinator should always be a resource to you. Your coordinator would know your appointment date, your mandatory review year, any changes in that, and they can walk you through all of that information. So for the first question, if I'm eligible for an extension, should I apply for one? We always encourage faculty to apply for an extension if you have a qualifying reason. It is definitely your choice, and you have to make that decision for yourself, but we encourage you to do so. There is really no downside or disadvantage. There are some perceived negatives, which might include your perception that is viewed negatively by your D co-op or even PSC. I can tell you, I attend the co-op meetings, extensions never come up in the conversation. It may be noted that there was a change in the mandatory review year, but it's never part of the discussion. It's never viewed negatively by the committee. And then you might think you're on track and this extension is causing you to slow down. That's the only negative to it. But again, we encourage you to apply if you have a qualifying reason. It's important that you know that your request for an extension must be submitted within the year of the occurrence. Unfortunately, we've had some faculty that they either weren't aware of the extension option, or they weren't timely in their submission and it was submitted a year later. And in those cases, we don't move those requests forward. So please keep that timeline in mind. How many extensions can I take? You can take up to 3. If you have twins or triplets or, multiple children at one time, that only qualifies as one event. You can't take one for each child. So, but you can request up to 3. How long is an extension? It is 1 year. And that extension extends your reappointment timeline. So for instance, if your reappointment was coming up in 3 years, it now changes to 4 years. So it extends the entire cycle. If I am granted an extension and I decide I'm not going to need it after all, what do I do? Can I still be proposed by my chair for promotion in my original mandatory review year? Yes, you can do that. You may feel that you don't need to take it, but again, we encourage you to take advantage of that additional time. But again, if you don't feel the need, you can still come forward. There is one exception though, and that is to the automatic COVID extension. If you had an automatic COVID extension and you feel as though you don't need that extension, there is a request to rescind the COVID extension. That the first one was granted by the provost office. So because it's not a school of medicine process, the provost has implemented an opt-out process. That information is posted on our website, and communication was sent out to all of the department chairs and faculty coordinators regarding that. So if you receive that and you decide you need to opt out, please have a conversation first. It's important that you understand the implications. Again, it's your choice, but please make sure that you have a detailed conversation with your division chair, if applicable, and your department chair.
Thanks, Alberta.
One more thing, Erica, sorry, there's a podcast about extensions, about all details about this are in the podcast, all these questions about it, including the COVID extension. So please feel free to look at that too.
Yes, thank you.
I would say about that, honestly, when we look at dossiers, we're looking at years. We're really not looking at exactly when your reappointment fell. So there's really no harm in having it. I mean, I'm not going to say like, oh, this is an early thing because you went up at year 7, but that's because you got an extension. I mean, it's time and what your productivity is always, that's what's looked at.
Right. And Erica said exactly what I was going to say next, which is, for instance, if you're in your 6th year or the 7th year, we look at your original time and no one really reviews it as early, even though technically based on your mandatory review year changing, it is early if you decide to come up sooner than that extended year. If it's before the 6th year, of course, it's considered early. And as I said, the one exception is the COVID extensions. So I want to just speak briefly about how they're applied. So at the assistant rank, you have consecutive reappointments. And I mentioned this before, so it impacts your reappointment and it impacts your promotion year. If you can take up to the 3, and the COVID extension does not count towards that 3. So if you've had the automatic COVID extension, you can still request up to the 3 extensions for the qualifying reasons.
There's a question about PSOM systems for identifying people who would potentially be eligible for early promotion. There is no system. PSOM doesn't, we're not looking for people who are going up early. Again, this goes back to my first comment, which is that the original decisions about this are happening at a departmental level. So it behooves you as a faculty member to have a close relationship with your mentor, that your education officer, the vice chair for faculty affairs, all of the people who are helping you figure out how you're coming along and guiding you through the process to decide when you're ready to go up. There's really nothing to say beyond that. We just look at things once they come to us. And let's move on to the next slide.
And if I can just add that you should not have the expectation that your department chair or EO or your mentor is going to be the one driving that decision. They may, but in the event you're not approached by one of them, but you feel that you should be considered for early promotion, you should initiate that conversation. But take their advice because it's very tricky when you come up early, and if you're not ready, you know, it does have some negative impacts. And even if you're not in a position where, you know, if it doesn't get all the way through to PSC, for instance, say at the D co-op, they decide you're not ready, that could also cause some emotional impacts for the faculty members. So just make sure that you're ready if you do decide to come up early, and that you take the advice of those that are pouring into you and have your best career path in mind.
Great, thanks, Arbretta. All right, let's move on to co-op guidelines. So what are we looking for? Next slide.
I think this is me now.
Oh, sorry, Rod.
That's all right.
Right.
We're doing a tag team
Right.
approach here today.
Awesome.
Yeah, so co-op is not a secret society. We are there for you. Just like Arbretta said, you should work with your department, but if you end up having questions your department can't answer or the department's not sure of, reach out to any of the co-op members. What is co-op? It's the Committee on Appointments and Promotion. Who is on it? In the range of 25 to 30, it fluctuates a bit. They're all full professors, and the tenure or CE track tend to be more tenure track members of the co-op, and many departments. Not all departments are represented, but many departments are represented. There are two co-chairs, as you've seen, one focusing on CE and one focusing on tenure. We meet every 2 weeks for about 10 months of the year, and I was trying to get this number here, but I think it's in the neighborhood of 500 or so actions a year. So it's a very busy committee, and we are seeing lots and lots of cases. Next slide, please.
Right,
So
if I can interject, I did find the number for last year, 750 cases.
Wow, that's a lot.
How many was it? I'm sorry.
750.
750. I'm off by 50%. Okay. Yeah, it seemed like a busy year. So what are we looking for? What does co-op do when they get the dossier? How are they evaluating you? So in the CE track, they're very much similar between the two different tracks, the two different standing faculty tracks. Looking for continuous productivity. We're not looking for plateaus. We're looking for somebody with a trajectory, an increasing trajectory of productivity, of impact, of all of the things that you do to judge how you're viewed outside of this institution. That's what's really critical. We're looking at you inside the institution, but we're also looking at you outside the institution. For the CE track, collaborative interdisciplinary and team research is critically important. We value it highly, but we want to know what your role is. And there are many ways to define your role, and we can talk more about that in a minute, but it's very important to clarify your role. We like to see comments like, this paper, this work would never have been accomplished without the input of this particular person, even though you're buried in the middle authorship somewhere. Grant funding SPI is not required, but it does reflect your impact and recognition. It's certainly valued. Teaching excellence, professionalism, citizenship, and all those things, as well as clinical excellence if you happen to be a clinician. So we're looking at all of these things, and many of these things are hard to define. And so that's why we need a committee of 30 people to go over these things. If it were easy to define, we just have a checklist and have ChatGPT do it. So that's the CE track. Next slide, please. Tenure track is much the same. Continuous scholarly productivity, impact, trajectory, all of those things are evaluated. The big difference is that we're looking for independence. We're looking for you to see that you are an independent investigator. Therefore, extramural funding as a PI is expected. Teaching excellence and so forth, just like before, is something that's expected for the tenure track. So the big difference again is independence and grant funding. So when we look at your papers at the tenure track, we want to see that you're a senior or first author a majority of the time, but that certainly middle authorship and team science is also very much valued. Next slide. And promotion to full professor, we've already touched on this a little bit, is much the same. We're not looking for somebody who's plateaued. We're looking for somebody who is continuing their trajectory, continuing their impact, continuing their national presence. There is no minimum time at the associate rank, but I would say typical is 5 to 6 years. There are people who come up in 3 years, and much of them have an amazing trajectory. So we're evaluating all of them as well. COAP, the process is the same, including the extramural consultants. So if you come up too early, sometimes it's hard to find a new group of extramural consultants. And so that's one of the reasons that we wait. And in this case, it's not limited to a single provost review. You can be reviewed and rejected again and again and again, depending on how many times your ego can handle it. Next slide. So how do we measure impact? I've mentioned that term several times, and these are just some. It's not all. This is not an exhaustive list. We're trying to be much more holistic now than we have been in the past as to how do we evaluate your impact. But they're the usual things that you'd expect: papers, how those papers are cited, where you appear on those papers, and what your contribution was. Grant funding is key because grant funding is nice because it means that a group of your peers have sat down and evaluated your thoughts and your science, and either funded you or not. And everybody knows how hard it is to get funded today. So grant funding is a key way to recognize your impact in your world of science. And of course, awards, study sections, leadership, and editorial. External lectures are key. One of the ways you get good extramural consultant letters is to get out and talk and to get to know people at other institutions. It's really, really, really important. Patents and so forth. And then the next slide, please. Clinical impact, much the same, but it tends to be a more local issue. What have you done to come up with innovative diagnostics, technologies that improve care, service on committees that deal with clinical issues, leadership roles, and so forth, all the way down clinical awards, clinical trials, especially for the CE track. We tend to see a lot of people engaged in clinical trials. So these are all the ways that we evaluate clinical impact. Next.
Well, I would add there, Rod, just with my CE hat on, that actually it's not just local. I mean, if you've done some clinical innovation, I mean, I'm a surgeon, surgical innovation, some new technique that has gotten you some national recognition that people are adopting, that kind of thing, really important to emphasize. We take that pretty seriously.
Yeah.
There's also a question here: are senior and first author papers weighted similarly? And I would say they're earlier on in your career, first authorship is important. Later on, we actually look for senior authorship papers to evaluate, for example, if you're being a good mentor. So they're both important, and most people have them at different points over that tenure period.
Right. You see an evolution of change in the authorship order, but when somebody comes up in the tenure track for promotion, we tend to see more senior authored work. And as Erica said, earlier in their career, they tended to be more first authored work. Okay, let me,
Next slide.
next slide. Okay, so now
I
it's
think is that.
back to you, Erica.
Okay, all right. So when we get your dossier, what's in it? Let's go through each of these things. So next slide. The academic plan is really something you all should be familiar with. This is part of your original offer letter, and it should be updated every year. It identifies your mentor. It should be something that you participate in, that mentor, your division chief, the department chair. And it just goes through all the tripartite mission plus admin roles that you have. So it talks about your clinical services, your research focus, your teaching as relevant. So sort of a snapshot of everything you do. Next slide. Oops, I think, is that the next one? Back? Well, I can talk about this, but I think we're back. Okay. So internal letters. So when we look at the dossier, we're getting help from people who are in your field or who you collaborate with, who know you better than us and who know the field. Because I'm an otolaryngologist. I may look at what a pediatric cardiologist is doing. I have not the first clue what they do, so we need people who do. So the internal letters are optional, but they're helpful. There isn't a maximum number, but we often see 1 to 3. If you're doing team science, a letter from a team leader on what your particular role might be an example of a letter that's very helpful. If you have worked with somebody who's well known in the field, a strong mentor, a letter from that person saying why you are independent from that person, and this really is both tracks, is important. Next. All right, so the external consultants input, who are they and what are they doing? First of all, they're evaluating the scope and significance of your scholarship, your degree of recognition. They are asked to rank you compared to leading scholars in the area. They are asked about your likelihood of achieving a similar rank at leading institutions. And most often these people are from our peer institutions. And then commenting where appropriate on your skill and effectiveness as a teacher and clinician. Next. So the way it works now is you're asked to give 18 names. There are 3 of these are selected by the candidate themselves, and then 11 are selected by the department with no input from the candidate. And then we're now asking for 4 alternates. It's gotten increasingly difficult to get letters from people. And so that's why there's so many. If you from that list of 18 are getting 7 or 8, that's actually very common. So don't worry. We don't judge that as something wrong with you if people aren't responding necessarily. And you won't know that, but anyway, that's the fact. That's why the number is so high. The consultants should be from peer institutions or institutions that are known for excellence in your particular field. And the candidates have to be at the proposed rank or higher. So, for example, if you're going up to associate, you're allowed to have a couple of associate professors who do your evaluation. They are not meant to be contacted in advance. Only the Office of Academic Affairs has interaction with the consultant. Please, please, please do not do that. 1 collaborator is allowed in each list. So in other words, 2 overall for your set of consultants, 1 from the department and 1 from you. There is a little bit of wiggle room with that. And so there's some gray areas there that the Office of Academic Affairs can help you with, where if you're on large consortia papers, for example, and the consultant is on a paper, you're both level authors or something like that, those people can be proposed. But, it may require a little explanation. Next. So what do they get from the Office of Academic Affairs? They'll get your CV, they'll get your grants pages, your personal statement, which is one of the many reasons why that statement really is important. And then 3 or 4 selected reprints that you choose that, speak to your best work. Next. And then some questions that we commonly get. Can a former mentor from a different institution be on the list? And the answer, I think I've sort of already addressed that. Yes, but with some qualifications in terms of who else you've worked with previously. What if I've worked with everyone in my area? I'm in a niche area. Again, this is sort of a gray area. And I think that if you share authorship, there's going to be required an explanation. The Office of Academic Affairs is very familiar with this and can work with you to try to figure out who's appropriate or who's not. They ultimately really are doing the deep dive into these people, and then we'll look at them after that. But really, if you have questions about that, the Office of Academic Affairs can help you. What is the best possible extramural consult? What if the best possible reviewers from my specialty area are faculty at non-peer institutions, as was mentioned? It's okay, as long as it's justified why, how they are experts in your particular field. And as I mentioned, if a reviewer doesn't respond to the request, that really more and more, it's not something that we consider problematic, because it's just, people have a lot to do. Their demands on everybody's time are huge. And we understand that, people may love you and think you're wonderful and still not have time to write you a letter. And how long do they have to complete their review? They have a month. A lot of this is going to be outside of, the process that you see. It's happening behind the scenes as your dossier kind of trickles through the process. If you have further questions, there is, again, this resource page. And then, sorry, there's a question. Can you share the list of peer institutions? I have looked through the website and not found the exact list that is considered peer by Penn. Arboretta, you want to comment on that?
Sorry, I'm muted. I'm sorry, which section again?
For how peer institutions are defined.
Well, that's an interesting question, because peer institutions have been defined by using the U.S. News and World Reports. Now that is changing slightly, because next year will no longer be a part of that. Departments have been advised, though, to still follow that ranking. And it's usually up to about a number 35 in ranking. But at the same time, if your work is recognized in institutions that are not considered peers, we still advise you to use those faculty at those institutions, because there are some fields that, it may not be the best or most appropriate consultant to assess your dossier. So don't get, fixed on using just only institutions from that peer list.
So there's
I asked a question, that was my question. So I just, this is Shan Sengathan from pediatrics. If I might add a clarification, I attended some of these other promotion related seminars, and I was told that there is a list that you have somewhere on the website. Is that not true, or you're just going year to year? Obviously, I understand that there might be situations where you cannot just adhere to those institutions, but just for the sake of clarity, is there a place where you have a list of these are the peer institutions?
We don't post
Okay.
a list.
Okay.
It is available online, but we don't post it on our site.
Okay, and I
So
think Joanna has a follow-up question.
There's a follow-up question about, didn't a lot of our peer institutions pull out of the U.S. News and World Report? Yes and no. They pulled out, and we pulled out of providing information for them, but U.S. News and World Report is still gonna rank schools. So the list will still exist, or at least for some period of time.
Right.
I think this is not that much of a mystery. I think everybody knows what our peer institutions are pretty much. And if you have a question, it really can depend quite a lot on what your particular area of expertise is. And then we don't know and you do. And so everybody has to be justified. So it becomes pretty obvious. Moving on, I think maybe to educational impact, just so we can get through our slides and get to more questions. How do we assess educational impact? The answer is there are many ways, and more ways than perhaps there used to be. And it can be any modality of teaching that you do. So this is in the standard metrics of levels of trainees and courses, in clinical skill programs, professional development. This is classroom or outside of classroom. It can be curriculum development, programmatic development, CME, mentoring, outreach. So really the key is that you keep track of it and you document it. The one sort of bean counting thing that we do look at is invited lectures. And as Rod mentioned earlier, it's a way of us assessing that you have been recognized by peers, peer institutions as having something worth talking about. So that is something that we kind of count and look at where the lectures are they national and international, that kind of thing. Next slide. And this is where I think your education officer can help tremendously. So have a relationship with that person. You can't emphasize enough this next bullet point, keep your teaching activities workbook handy and update it weekly, every other week, so that you don't forget, because you will forget if you don't write it down. Again, as I said, we look at everything. So the TED data, while it's useful, it's not mandatory at all. There are plenty of other ways that we can assess whether you've done an effective job. That might be saving evaluations from CME and talks and things like that, but it doesn't even have to have a score. So really everything counts. And Rod, I think back to you now. Yeah, next slide.
Next slide. Yeah, so let's just quickly go over some CV things. First of all, it needs to be in Penn format, of course. We won't look at it otherwise. Invited talks just for the last 5 years, and invited talks, conference presentations are okay. This is a question we get a lot. It's best at a peer institution like a Grand Rounds or something like that. But if you were invited to give an oral talk at a conference, that's fine too. CVs can be updated right until the very moment that PSOM co-op reviews it. So updates are encouraged. You get a grant that wasn't in your initial dossier, please tell us about it. That's crucially important. And make sure your publications are in the right category. We get a lot of CVs that have case reports in the original research category and so forth. Get them in the right place, because that just looks sloppy. And only include published or in press publications. Now we're starting to see a lot more dossiers that have med archives and bioarchives papers in them, and those of course are not peer-reviewed papers, and they're not accepted for publication yet. And so although you can put them there, we're not going to pay a lot of attention to them. List all the authors, and you can include, this is a gray area right now, you certainly can include alternate media, and we look at that and we value it. Social media is something we've talked about a lot in COAP. We're not sure what to do with it at this point, and so you can put it in your CV, but we're probably not going to pay a lot of attention to it.
Rod, can I just make a point again?
Sure.
There's a podcast on this, so please, with David Mankoff. So please listen to that. But also, one thing that we see coming through is that CVs can be quite sloppy. And that can really reflect poorly on you. It doesn't mean you won't get promoted, but it just tells us you haven't taken the time and are not taking this as seriously as you should. And so you should not leave your CV, you're updating your feds to your admin or a colleague. You should really update it yourself to make sure it's accurate with regard to where to put your papers, et cetera, because that's in part where some of this happens, that papers are put in the wrong place, is that, you know, you're handing it off to someone else who may not know. So you know best about your own CV, so you should do it yourself.
Yeah, and I would add to that it sort of makes us not trust what you're saying. In fact, I can remember at least one time where it was so egregious that we actually turned away the dossier and just didn't even consider it until a reboot happened. So you don't want to be in that position.
You have your hand up, Arboretta. You're muted, Arboretta.
Thank you. I just want to add to this point, and it was a great point. If you have a visa status, please make sure that your PR status is updated when your dossier is submitted. We have found over just this year, we had a few instances where the CV did not reflect PR status, and the provost office will not accept the dossier for certain cases. You know, tenure can't be granted if you don't have PR status. They will not accept the dossier if that's not updated on your CV. So please be mindful of that as well.
Great, good point. Thank you. Next slide, please. Grants, similar thing. Tell us where the grant is from and the grant number, because that's one of the ways that we can check on it other than your name. Give us the term of the award and past, current, or pending. Pending in your grants pages means that it's been submitted to a granting agency, not just something that you hope to do in the future. Put percent effort as funded. Of course, if it's a submitted grant, you don't know if it's funded, but put your percent effort as funded for the current grants. And use the comment section to report any additional information. If the PI is not you, point out who it is. If it was just reviewed and you don't know about funding, put the score down, percentile. Put down whether it's a no-cost extension or whatever. Provide updates until the very last moment, as I said a minute ago. Next slide, please. Chair's recommendation letter. This is very important. It's usually about 2 pages. Gives a background of who you are, where you came from, what your research is about in a very succinct manner, hopefully. A teaching and mentoring statement, a summary of all your related activities, clinical activities and what you do and how often you do it, distinguishing contributions, you know, the usual things, local, national, international, societies, and inclusion, diversity, and equity activities, and so forth. Professionalism and citizenship. It tends to be more of a checkbox, but it's very, very important that it be checked. And then any mitigating circumstances that reviewers should consider in your particular dossier. So next slide, please.
Just Rod, there's a question. My mentor suggested putting excellent grant scores that were not funded, 10th percentile NIH R01. Is that to be listed in the pending grant comments, even if a funding decision has been made?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think I would put it in the pending grant column, because if you got a decent score, it means you're going to resubmit it. And so I have seen a lot of those in the grants pages, and I think that's a you know, a good thing to put in.
You can also put something about that in your personal statement, you know, about that this has happened. So that's another place you could put.
Right. Yeah, the personal statement, as I put here, and the chair's letter are places to put stuff like that. There's all kinds of material you can put in your personal statement to sort of clarify issues, to if there are any discrepancies or inconsistencies in your CV. Let's say you've only given 5 talks, but you've got a gajillion papers and grants. You know, that would be considered an inconsistency, and it'd be useful for us to hear why that happened, why you're not getting out speaking, and so forth.
And Rod, one more question about grants. On tenure track, does it hurt your appearance of independence to add mentors as co-PIs to your?
No, if you're a PI,
Sorry,
that's,
co-investigator, sorry.
yeah, I mean, if you're a PI, that's what's key. If you have a mentor or a previous collaborator as a co-investigator in a grant, that's fine, that's expected.
And I just want to add to the personal statement, this is your opportunity to shine. Some of our faculty are a little, maybe a little shy. Don't be shy in preparing your personal statement. This is also your opportunity to advocate for yourself and to also include any community engagement, any efforts that you're involved in, diversity, equity, and inclusion, any and everything that you think that is related to your career and your career path, please include it in your personal statement.
Next slide, please. So this is an option. This is a new optional statement that, I think arose out of the pandemic, really, but it's basically a statement of any mitigating circumstances that you think have impacted your career to this point. And you can also put the same material in the personal statement, but this is just another place to put it that's very defined. And it could be pretty much anything. And so consider this possibility. There are instructions for what kind of things that you can put in here. And so please consider using it if you think you have mitigating circumstances to consider.
I would just add maybe to that I would be a little careful about this because unless it's a pretty significant thing and perhaps you're in your, the last year that you can be considered, because honestly, if you're going up for promotion, your dossier should be ready for promotion and we're going to look at it as such. So we're not going to do, affirmative action because of mitigating circumstances unless there's a very significant reason. So I just would caution you about using that and make sure you've vetted it with appropriate people.
Like your mentors. Okay, next slide. And this is back to Meryl to close us out.
So just so you're aware, these are all the people who are involved in supporting you as you go through the promotion process. So you all should know who your faculty coordinators are, who the educational officers of your departments or divisions are. We have vice chairs in your departments for faculty affairs, for faculty development, for DEI, and professional representatives. And then at the school level, we have the Office of Academic Affairs, or Beretta, Lisa, myself, all working to help you in this effort. And so just know that all these, there's like a team, a team here behind, it takes a village to help you get through this process. We try to make it as transparent as possible. It does take a long time for you to go through this promotion process, but just know that, in the background, we are constantly working to make sure it happens as quickly as it can happen. And so don't hesitate to ask any of us any questions you might have. Next slide. I think that's it.
And then I also want to add, in addition to those sections that were noted in the previous slide, we recently added a policies and guidelines tab. All of the faculty policies they weren't centralized, and we're still developing that page. So in the future, you'll find a section where the policies can be searched. And you'll also have another section where you'll see new and revised policies. So if you have any questions about policies, please go to that tab.
Are there any final questions? You could just say them out loud. You don't have to put it in the chat.
There is a point I'd like to clarify from earlier on that we've seen a problem with recently, and that is that the timeline issue. If you are a PhD in a clinical department, let's say medicine, and you have no clinical responsibilities, even though you're in a clinical department, your timeline is 7 years. So it doesn't matter whether your department is clinical or not, it's whether you have clinical responsibilities. That needs to be, that has been an issue in the recent past.
Good point.
I know this is kind of an impossible question to answer. Number of talks, like what's a good ballpark?
Did you say number of, what,
Number of
Talks.
like
Invited
invited
talks?
lectures.
hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, I would just say there are no numbers for anything. But, if you've had 3 in the last 5 years, then we're gonna want to know why.
So if somebody's, given 5-ish a year, that's not going to be
Plenty,
looked at.
plenty,
Okay,
plenty.
okay.
I mean, some of it depends on where they are a little bit too. We want to know if you're around the country, if you're around the world. We're looking at the content a little bit, all that.
Are you looking also, sorry, I don't mean to monopolize. I'll be quiet in a second, but are you looking at sort of, so like if you give a lecture over Zoom, it's probably not the same as if you give it in person. Also, if you give it to a lab meeting, is it the same as giving it in grand rounds?
No, the Zoom doesn't matter at all. I mean,
Okay.
we would have had to have raised 3 years of activity if that were the case. So no,
Yeah.
we're counting all that. And lab meeting, I mean, it can't be your lab.
Yeah, but sometimes, you have like a lab invite you to give a talk to their lab. Like I recently spoke.
If it's within Penn, no, then that's in a separate category. That's, in the CV format, it's local, but if it's outside of Penn, that would be okay.
Okay.
And one
Thanks.
thing, Nick, about invited talks is if you have one talk 5 years ago, but then you have 3 talks the next year and 5 talks the year after that, that's the trajectory we're talking about. So that
Yeah.
means that people are hearing you at places and then you're getting invited again, to a different place. So it's not only the number, it's sort of watching the impact that happens to you over the course of time.
Thanks.
And there's to confirm CHOP does not count. Does that mean, are you asking about the invited talk thing? Because it is Penn. It's not, it's outside of Penn would be counted.
Right, CHOP counts as Penn. It's
Right.
the same.
And then the answer about a session for associate to full, Lucy, I don't know if you're.
We're happy to do it if you're happy to do it. So we can certainly do that for the fall.
I'm not sure it's substantive enough, the differences, because it's really just a continued trajectory of more of the same process and everything. So we can do it, but I'm not sure it's going to be a lot different.
Maybe the thing to do is for people who are going to associate to full, if there are questions, they can come and actually meet with you.
Sure.
I do think that some of the one-on-one is wonderful, and I really urge people, if they have personal questions, that they should meet personally with Erica and Rod.
Yeah, and we absolutely encourage that, feel free. We're both in the global, you can find us very easily. And I meet with people regularly who have questions.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Well, we really appreciate all of you, Arboretta, Erica, Rod, and Meryl. This is so helpful. And each year, I think for the people who come to these, it gives them a sense of what they still need to ask you and what they need to do. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Pleasure.